As much as I love Jurassic Park, there's a lot of science in that movie that just doesn't add up. So let's uncover some of the biggest myths about cloning from this iconic film. Cloning has been a fixture in science fiction for decades, but it was brought into the mainstream by Jurassic Park, which was released 30 years ago in 1993. In the movie, the wealthy and eccentric John Hammond has managed to create a theme park full of dinosaurs that have been cloned from fossilized DNA found in mosquitoes preserved in amber. And while the idea of being able to bring back extinct species is very appealing, it's not how cloning works. Let's start with what cloning actually is. You might be thinking of Dolly the sheep, the first mammal that was cloned from an adult cell in 1996. But cloning has been around since 1952, when scientists successfully cloned a frog by removing the nucleus from an egg cell and replacing it with the nucleus from a tadpole cell. Dolly was cloned using a similar process called somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT. An unfertilized egg cell is removed from a donor animal, then the nucleus of that cell, which contains the animal's DNA, is removed from the egg. A somatic cell, any cell in the body other than sperm or egg cells, is taken from the animal that's to be cloned, and its nucleus is injected into the enucleated egg cell. If all goes well, the reconstructed embryo will develop into a cloned animal. In Dolly's case, it took 277 attempts before she was successfully born. Now that we know how Dolly was made, let's return to Jurassic Park and see where it went wrong. The basic premise of Jurassic Park is that paleontologists have discovered a fossil of a prehistoric mosquito with blood still inside it. This blood contains the genetic material necessary to recreate a dinosaur. However, if this were true, it would be more of a miracle than scientific achievement. The oldest known blood sample is only about 100 years old. Anything older than that has either turned to bone or completely decomposed. So finding fresh blood in a mosquito preserved in amber would be impossible, especially considering that amber itself takes hundreds or thousands of years to form. Even if a mosquito did manage to get trapped with a live dinosaur's blood, that blood would eventually turn to a substance called hematite, which is iron oxide and rust. There's also another problem with using ancient blood to clone a dinosaur. Blood contains proteins that are crucial to the immune system. Since the environment, plants, and animals have changed so much over time, those proteins wouldn't function anymore. They could even cause massive damage to a dinosaur's body. In short, dinosaurs and their corresponding proteins would have evolved alongside one another, so using modern proteins in place of their own would kill them. But let's just assume that this didn't happen, and that a mosquito did manage to get its fill of dinosaur blood without it turning to rust or getting destroyed by the environment. Even still, extracting pure dinosaur DNA from the blood would be nearly impossible. DNA degrades over time and becomes more fragmented. For example, when you see a dinosaur fossil with bone fragments missing, that's usually because the bones have degraded after the animal died. When scientists study fossils, they don't even have whole bones to look at, just small pieces. So unless our technology advances significantly, it's unlikely that scientists would ever be able to put together a complete strand of intact dinosaur DNA. But let's say it's possible. Scientists have figured out how to piece together the entire genome and have decided to use that DNA to clone a dinosaur. It would actually be better to use an egg cell from a bird rather than an amphibian like they did in the lab. That's because birds are the closest living relatives to dinosaurs. So the genetic material from both species would be more similar and easier to work with. Also, birds have been laying eggs for millions of years, meaning that they've had plenty of time to evolve along with their eggs. So there's a good chance that a dinosaur egg wouldn't reject a dinosaur embryo. But again, it's best to be cautious. As we mentioned earlier, proteins play a major role in an animal's immune response, so scientists would need to take out a bird's immune system entirely if they wanted to replace it with a dinosaur's. This means removing the bird's white blood cells and replacing them with stem cells that would later grow into dino cells. Even if they could do this, it would make the host extremely vulnerable to disease. But let's pretend that everything has gone perfectly and scientists have successfully cloned a dinosaur. There would still be one final obstacle. Dinosaurs lived between 248 and 66 million years ago, when the Earth had a much warmer climate. Some parts of the world were even 10 degrees Celsius warmer than they are now. And when they roamed the planet, the atmosphere had almost twice as much carbon dioxide as it does now. Dinosaurs also lived in a world that was covered in swampland and dense rainforests. So even if scientists could clone a dinosaur, where would they put it? We couldn't risk putting a carnivorous dinosaur into a habitat that humans have developed for themselves. We would have to revert large swaths of land back to the way they were millions of years ago, including repopulating them with plants and animals that lived during the late Cretaceous period. But doing so would destroy human infrastructure, agriculture, and economies. And with all of the problems facing endangered species today, it would be difficult to justify giving up so much space to house a new dinosaur. And finally, bringing back a dinosaur would be a risk to the ecosystem. No matter how careful scientists are, they can't predict all of the consequences of introducing a new species into an environment. There's always the chance that a dinosaur could end up being a successful invasive species. It could also eat a plant that's rare in its ecosystem, destroying it. Or it could introduce a new disease to an area. Animals that hadn't evolved to fight off diseases from another era could end up going extinct themselves. Even worse, the dinosaurs could escape their habitat and begin hunting down humans. If none of this has convinced you that cloning dinosaurs is a bad idea, maybe the ethical concerns will. Some people believe that cloning is a violation of natural law. Others believe that bringing back dinosaurs would be cruel because they would live in captivity. They would never experience what it was like to roam free. If dinosaurs were going to be cloned, many argue that they should be allowed to live out their lives in a natural habitat. But doing so would pose a threat to other species, as we mentioned earlier. So dinosaurs would likely be stuck in captivity for the rest of their lives. Some people also feel that cloning dinosaurs is unethical because it would be like creating a new species just for our amusement. All of this isn't even taking into account the cost. The original Jurassic Park had a budget of $63 million, but ended up earning $1 billion worldwide. So the studio might be inclined to invest in another dinosaur movie. However, even if it earned 10 times what the first one did, it still wouldn't cover the costs of bringing back dinosaurs. So although it makes for a fun movie, cloning dinosaurs is a terrible idea. There are alternatives, though. In the real world, genetic engineering is allowing scientists to edit the DNA of an animal. Scientists are using CRISPR technology to rewrite the genes of an organism. One day, they may even rewrite the genes of a living animal to resemble a dinosaur. But until that happens, we'll never know whether dinosaurs will be brought back to life or if they'll forever remain in the past. Although the science behind Jurassic Park isn't accurate, there's nothing fake about the special effects. The animatronics and animatronic dinosaurs created for the park are incredibly detailed. In fact, some of them were designed to move and behave just like real dinosaurs, and it shows in the movie. Check out this video to learn how these robotic dinosaurs were made. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new, hit the like button and share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel and get a notification for every new video.